quick, get the microphone on. Yeah, exactly. Oh, we're going online. Cut the mic. Oh. Well, how is everyone? Look, I know it's a day ending in Y. We can moan the rest of the days of the week. You know, James, if you were a Disney princess, you'd be Bamona. Oh, well, welcome everyone to Bible Biker Church TUBBS study through Deuteronomy. Get in where you fit in. So, welcome everybody. Today we're in Deuteronomy chapter 5. And it's going to be another Moses beating it into them. And another reminder for Moses. But before we get into that, let's open up with a quick prayer. Give everyone here a second to shuffle in. All right. Well, thank you, Lord, for giving us this place to study and to get to know you and to just really open up our hearts and minds and grow closer to you, Lord, as we learn more about you and what you've done through us and for us in the past. There's just so much history in the Bible that really explains, kind of foretellings of Jesus and what he has done for us. So come and be with us now as we study the book of Deuteronomy chapter 5 and get to know you a little better. Amen. All right. So, let's see here. So my Bible, the little footnote on it says it's the 10 Commandments repeated for chapter 5. And this is going to be more overarching reminders to the people about obeying God and keeping his commandments as really the only way to prosper. As we covered last week, they were only able to keep the promised land for 550 years before it was totally destroyed and kind of essentially taken away from them. So this is Moses kind of setting this up in advance on, hey, you're only going to be able to keep and have nice things if you do what the Lord tells you to do. And since this is the 10 Commandments repeated, we should keep in mind that this is Moses speaking to a new generation, because for Israel to be able to enter the promised land, because they made God mad, with their grumblings, the old generation had to die off, which took about 40 years before they could enter the promised land. So this is stuff that these children, now men, should already know, that their parents should have taught them. But this is Moses restating the 10 Commandments for a new generation. Kind of as a way, really, to be like double check and be like, hey, everybody knows this now. So if you screw up, it's on you. All right. So verse 1. Chapter 5, verse 1. Then Moses summoned all Israel and said to them, Hear, O Israel, the statutes and the ordinances which I am speaking today in your hearing, that you may learn and observe them carefully. The Lord your God made a covenant with us at Horeb, which is Mount Sinai. The Lord did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with us, with all of us here alive today. So this is significant, because it's not like, hey, this was promised to your fathers' fathers. This promise was really made to their dad, who is now since passed, and they're taking the place. But this is a living covenant for the living God that they serve. So this is very important. And the present generation needs to understand the covenant to enjoy the blessings of the covenant that they were given by God. All right, verse 4. The Lord spoke to you face to face at the mountain from the midst of fire, while I was standing between the Lord and you at that time to declare to you the word of the Lord. For you were afraid because of the fire and did not go up into the mountain. So what Moses is saying is here is they were at the mountain and they heard the voice of God, but the voice of God was too much for Israel to handle, so they needed an intercessor, which is Moses. And that kind of cues us up for what Jesus is going to do for us later on, as being the intercessor between us and God, as a way our direct access to God is through Jesus. So this is kind of queuing us up for what's going to come on down the pipe. And let's see. Yeah. But no, I had another note here. Sorry. So the terminology face to face comes from Hebrew, and it could be taken to mean intimate and free communication. Oh, sorry. So intimate and free communication between man speaking with God directly and not dying. So, because nobody else had that at that time, and Israel couldn't handle it, which is why they had Moses as to intercede for them. Intercede means to just go between. So it's just kind of a weird little colloquial translation issue between Hebrew and English. All right. Oh, and what I was also going to say about that is face to face with Moses, because when they heard from him on the mountain, all they heard was a voice, from the midst of the fire and the smoke and everything like that. They didn't actually see God. So, but in Hebrew, face to face means direct communication, even if it's not literal, like they didn't see God. Just to clarify there. Well, yeah. Yeah, and that was when Moses first met the Lord. All right. And verse 6 here. I am the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. Verse 7, you shall have no other gods before me. So, this is the first commandment he's going to go over. You should have no other gods before God. And it was common at that time for them to think that they could have other deities as long as they aligned up with God. And Moses is making it very clear that there is nothing else besides God. They can't worship anything that is kind of in the same direction as God. They can't worship Baal, or there's another goddess of fertility and sex that they would worship as well. So Moses is making it explicitly clear there is no other gods. But he's also setting the framework for why Israel would obey, because he's setting up who the Lord is and what the Lord has done for them. So logically, it would follow that they would want to obey the Lord. Because verse 6 here, I am the Lord your God, so that's the personage, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of slavery. So this one God, here's what he's done for you. You should obey him. All right. Let's see here. And any distraction or passion or idolatry can be a god above God. And God is to be the pinnacle of our lives and aspirations. Idolatry takes many, many different forms. For me, it's probably power tools. Because Lord knows I have enough of them. Yes. Hey. I knew this was going to come in handy. I just didn't know how soon in the service. Yep. That you won't soon forget. Or maybe you will. All right. All right. Verse 8. You shall not make for yourself an idol or any likeness of what is in heaven above, or on earth below, or in the water underneath the earth. You shall not worship them or serve them, for I am the Lord your God, a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and on the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing love and kindness to thousands. Yep. Showing love and kindness to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. So this is the second commandment. You know, no golden calves. And yeah, that one technically made itself. Like, come on now. So there, a couple like things to pull out of this is the Lord your God is a jealous God. Well, what does that mean, really? You know, so he wants our attention and adoration and worship, but it goes beyond that. So he's not just jealous, for our attention. He's jealous for us. And like I had it on here. Let me pull this up real quick. I thought this was really insightful when I read it last night. Here it is. Where is it? So he refuses to share the human heart with any rival, not because he is selfish and wants us all for himself, but because he knows that upon that loyalty to him depends our very mortal life. God is not jealous of us, he's jealous for us. And the part I really liked about this is God's jealousy is love in action. So he's jealous for us because he knows like all the bad things that can creep in. I read that last night and I'm like, this was fire, fam. So, but the other part to pull out of this, and I think some people might get this confused, is, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children, on the third and fourth generations of those who hate me. And it's very specific. It's of those who hate him. But if you're in the third and fourth generation and you love the Lord, he's going to show loving kindness to you. So it's not like he's unfair, but he wants to be respected, for sure. Yeah, doling out punishments to those who hate him and loving kindness to those who love him. And the focus on this is like, it's on the idolatry of an entire nation. Nations that forsake the Lord will be judged, and it affects generations. So kind of reading between the lines on, the third and fourth generations. Anything that affects a nation is naturally going to affect over a long time span. Like what's going on today. Yep. Yep. All right, the third commandment, verse 11. You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not leave him unpunished who takes his name in vain. So, what are some of the ways... Oh, Fred? I was going to say, what are some of the ways where we could take the Lord's name in vain? Okay. Right, so don't swear an oath to God. I mean, really, because you don't know the number of hairs on your head anyways. What are some other ways we could take the Lord's name in vain? All right. Yes. I was waiting for someone to say it. or not saying the whole word. Yep. Yep. We're all guilty of that. Well, I was reading a little bit more into this, and it involves cursing, like using the name of the Lord lightly, just like frivolously, nonchalantly, and like hypocrisy with our actions that dishonors the Lord and breaks His commandments can be seen as taking His name in vain. And I was also reading that it leads to some pretty weird traditions depending on how specific you want to be on taking the Lord's name in vain. So some of the Jewish population won't even write His name on paper because if they have to tear the paper or throw the paper away, they wrote the Lord's name in vain. So that's kind of a funky tradition, but yeah, yeah, and yeah, that's yeah. So it does definitely leads to some interesting little traditions. What? Because they can, yeah, they consider it so holy that they can't utter it for fear that they would take it in vain in some form or fashion. So they prevent themselves from saying it. Uh, yeah, yeah, yeah. His authority and divinity was questioned, or really just disregarded blatantly. But that's their belief structure. All right. Yep. Yeah. Yeah. So Muhammad. Yeah. Yep. So off camera, there we were talking about how most major religions mention Jesus in some form or fashion, just so everyone online knows, because it got silent for a second. Yeah. Eventually, we'll have a microphone for the audience that doesn't feedback one day. All right, moving on to commandment number 4. Now, verse 12. Observe the Sabbath day and keep it holy, as the Lord your God commanded you. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord your God. In it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male servant or your female servant or your ox or your donkey or any of your cattle or the sojourner, which is just like a stranger who journeys with you, who stays with you, so that your male servant and your female servant may rest as well as you. You shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt. The Lord your God brought you out of there by a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. Therefore, the Lord your God commanded you to observe the Sabbath day. So this one's kind of interesting as well, because the Sabbath, Saturday, there are some Christians who think that you have to observe the Sabbath, and there are others who believe that since Christ died and arose for your sins, you've already entered into that rest. So anytime you're not working, you've already entered into the rest of Christ, and you obviously go out and do your work and everything, but you don't have to have a Sabbath day because Christ is your Sabbath and your rest and your freedom. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Well, all right. I got the Southern Bible. It says, "Everybody." Everybody gets to rest. So, and it's interesting too because this might be easily passed over. Here, God declared the essential humanity and dignity of women, slaves, and strangers, and said that they had the same right to a day of rest as the free Israeli man, which would be a radical concept in that day and time. Maybe it was just implied. Maybe they were. Look, maybe God was like Oprah, and he's like, "You're getting a day off. You're getting a day off. You're getting a day off." And you get a car. Let's see here. Oh, my other note on this says that this pattern was set forth since creation. You know, we are, remember in remembrance of the Lord, resting for the Lord. So, like, this has been an ongoing pattern since the earth was created. Yep. All right, moving on to Commandment 5. Verse 16 here. Honor your father and your mother as the Lord has commanded you, that your days may be prolonged and that it may go well with you on the land which the Lord your God gives you. What? All right, all right. So, what I took from this too is if Israel is to prosper, they are to listen and obey their earthly parents and God, who is, the supreme Father. You know, if they're going to survive and prosper, they need to be listening to God. And this also sets kind of the foundation for really any stable society. All these 10 Commandments set the scene for a stable society. Honor your parents, learn from your parents, honor God, learn from God, go out and prosper. And I just keep getting reminded again, obey the commandments, enter and retain the promised land for 550 years. Look, I'm kind of getting the hang of this little microphone thing. Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me out there? Or is it coming through fine? Oh. Well, I got Fred back there. All right. All right. I hope. All right. Well, hopefully half of it isn't super quiet. Yeah. It should be my wife. She's sick. All right. Nope. All right. All right. Moving on to Commandment 6. You shall not murder. Yeah. All right. Yep. So, this one sounds pretty self-explanatory, but what's the difference between murder and like capital punishment? Because you're still killing somebody. Intention, obeying the law. Yep. 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 And the city someone who murdered can flee to. So murder is considered taking the life without legal, the taking of a life without legal justification. Well, Now I don't have to go over that bullet point. Yeah. Jesus brought it down to, malice in your heart against someone can be considered, you know, murder. I just really want that person to go kick rocks permanently. Can be considered murder. So, even when you don't think you're sinning, you're probably sinning. So thank God for his forgiveness. All right, moving on to the 7th commandment. You shall not commit adultery. Again, sounds pretty self-explanatory, but, you know. No, no, a Pictionary. Well, again, Jesus will bring this down to, even if you're not brave enough or have the opportunity to commit the act, just the fact of having it in your heart or lusting after someone, you've already committed the sin of adultery. What is it? Yep. Yep. So the difference between adultery and fornication. Fornication is if you're unmarried and having sex. Adultery is if you're married and you break that covenant with your wife. All right, Red Hot Chili Peppers. Just like last week, we couldn't get through without one musical reference. Oh, two can be as bad as one. Fred and James. All right, all right. Gosh. All right. All puns aside, let's move to the eighth commandment. You shall not make puns. Says it right here. Yeah. What is this? The kingeth jameth. Thou shalteth not punneth. So the 8th commandment: you shall not steal. So, do we think this one, is the same as the others? If it's in your heart, that, you know, so time theft. Yep. So I got another one for you. So this commandment here establishes property rights. Some people own certain things, so taking it from them forcefully is bad. But if we were bought at a price, Christ's blood, can we steal from God by being disobedient? I feel like this thing went out again. Hello? Yeah. So, that's kind of an interesting thought, stealing from God through disobedience. All right, moving on to the 9th commandment. You shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. So, what does false witness mean? Lie. So don't swear something about someone that you don't know for a fact. Okay. What? Lying. Okay. How about telling stories about others uh, without facts or investigation? Like gossip. Hmm. Yep. I had a note for that. So slander is a lie invented to spread with intent to do harm. It is the worst form of injury a person can do to another. So, and the other part of this is tale-bearing, which is not really something that we use in common speech, but it means it's repeating a report about a person without careful investigation. Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've always said that, gossip is a venereal disease. So while I agree with you that the Bible was handed down by word of mouth, um, and there could be some things lost or left out or misplaced. This was also their tradition, so they'd take great care in making sure it's exactly correct as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, Fred, a lot of these traditions were passed down in song as well, as a way to tell stories and remembrance, because you remember a song a lot better than just remembering, set scripture. So we can take faith that, this is, correct. I know. I know. I get what you're saying. It's interesting. Oh yeah. Well, then we have Song of Solomon. So here's one other way we can bear false witness. What about inappropriate silence? Someone says something to not be true, and instead of speaking up and being like, "Hey, that's wrong. Here's why. Here's what I know. Here's what I've seen." You know, that's another way we can bear false witness to our neighbor or even to God. Someone says something that we know to be incontrue or untrue about God, we just don't say anything to correct them. You know. Yep. Yep. So moving on to the final commandment here. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. This is verse 21. You shall not desire your neighbor's house, his field, his male servant, his female servant, his ox, his donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor, including motorcycles. BBC Church says including motorcycles. Well, so really, really, why is coveting bad? Okay, well, like stealing, right? Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, or or manipulating situations, right? Yeah, but coveting would be like, okay, he got a new car, but I really want that. And why don't I have it? How can I like? Yeah, yeah, yeah. How can I be passive aggressive about this? Well, the other thing too is just like, pretty much everything we have is a gift from God. So if you're coveting something, you're really just telling God it's not enough, and you're just like, hey, I see all these things that you've given me, but this person has something. It's a little shinier. So I think you're slacking on the job, God. Yep. Oh, Fred, stop singing. Oh gosh. Oh, yeah. See how easy it is? Yep. I'll remember that at work. All right. So that's Moses going over the Ten Commandments. Now we're my little quotations say here it's Moses interceded, which is what I was talking about a little bit earlier, where Moses was in between, Israel and God, much like Jesus is in between us and God. So verse 22 here. These words the Lord spoke to all your assembly at the mountain from the midst of fire, of the cloud, of the thick gloom with a great voice, and he added no more to the commandments. He wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me, which I then shattered out of anger because of the golden calf in Exodus. Verse 23. And then you heard the voice from the midst of the darkness while the mountain was burning with fire. You came near to me, all the heads of your tribes and your elders. You said, Behold, the Lord our God has shown us his glory and his greatness, and we have heard his voice from the midst of the fire. We have seen today that God speaks with man, yet he lives. Now then, why should we die? So, they've seen that Moses speaks with God and lives, but they feel like they're going to die because the voice of the Lord is so powerful, which is why they want Moses to intercede for him. Let's see. Verse 25, the second half of verse 25. For this great fire will consume us. If we hear the voice of the Lord our God any longer, then we will die. For who is there of all flesh who has heard the voice of the living God speaking from the midst of the fire as we have and lived? So, Moses, essentially. Go near and hear all that the Lord our God says, and then speak to us all that the Lord our God speaks to you, and we will hear it and do it. So, this is them. They're kind of a little foolhardy that they think they're just gonna be able to hear what God says and do it, and like they're incorruptible and they're just gonna get it right the first time. Do we ever get anything right the first time? Did you have a comment, Fred? Yep, Justin. He's coming. No worries. Yep. 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 So the difference in intercessor and in Moses' time he essentially yell at the Israelites to get their attention. In our time he gives us a soft, still voice, as Fred was saying. But the other thing we can take away from this was the message at Mount Sinai was not come unto me, but more stay away, for I am holy and you are not. You know. So with Jesus, it's come unto me. With Moses, it's like, hey, God's holy, and you better not screw it up because you have a covenant with him. And Moses was a type to show what was to come in Jesus, kind of a glimpse of what was coming ahead. yeah. Oh yeah. So off microphone here. You know, it's if we in the Old Testament it really hammers home just how good we have it with, Christ, that we don't have to follow all these rules to the letter. But another takeaway from this is no one is good enough to obey all 10 commandments perfectly. So even at the time Moses was giving this, you know, these are really here just to show, in my opinion or my interpretation, that man is not holy, that we need something outside of ourselves to make us holy. Because no one's going to be able to do these. Like, I accidentally took the Lord's name in vain on service. So, the closest thing to perfect is the farthest thing from me. Verse 28. The Lord heard the voice of your words when you spoke to me, and the Lord said to me, I have heard the voice of the words of this people which have spoken to you. They have done well in all that they have spoken. Oh, that they had such heart in them that they would fear me and keep all my commandments always, that it may be well with them and their sons forever. But Israel is Israel, so they're going to do some bonehead moves. But I find it exciting that God's excited for us. God's excited about this people to worship him, a people of his own. Like, even though they screw up and he gets mad at them, like, he's still excited for them. And I find that really comforting. 30. Go say to them, return to your tents, but as for you, stand here by me, that I may speak to you all the commandments and the statutes and the judgments which you shall teach them, that they may observe them in the land which I give them to possess. So this is God talking to Moses. Hey, you're going to intercede. 32. So you shall observe to do just as the Lord your God has commanded you. You shall not turn aside to the left or to the right or to the left. You shall walk in the way which the Lord your God has commanded you, that you may live and that it may be well with you, and that you may prolong your days in the land which you will possess. So that last part there. Prolong your days in the land you will possess. Almost like God knows that 500, yeah, that 550 years is a blink in comparison to eternity. So, and what I really get from, Moses interceding and him kind of going over this again, obey the commandments, obey God, prosper, turn to the right or to the left, die. It's very, I don't think Moses can make it any simpler, and yet they still just interpret their own thing. Yep. Yeah, Israel will only have good things through obedience. You guys have any questions? Yeah. So, you guys have any questions or comments? We have a paper shredder in there for complaints. They just feed straight in. So, if there's no, okay, are we still online, Fred? Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna go to our personal and private prayer requests, and we're gonna go offline. As always, we have Sunday morning service at 11, Celebrate Recovery at 4, and then next Wednesday's service. And did we have something going for Labor Day or no? Oh, that's next week. So I'm already a week ahead. Never mind. I think it's the 4th. Yeah. Do we have a booth at Hooray for Harriman? Okay. Well, then we will be there. All right. I'll